component. It is everything.
Okay. About a week and a half ago, I had a bill that I had to pay in a few days, and I didn't know how I was going to pay. And it was only for a certain amount of money. And I just remember getting this feeling of like, remembering what Jerry had said about, I think in the 60s when he had taught people the principles in Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill, that some people got it, but most didn't. And I remember standing there and I was thinking, how am I going to pay this or whatever? And
some people were just born into an expectation of prosperity, while most that he knew were not born into that expectation of prosperity. And so it was introduced to him for the first time by reading that book. And by reading the book, by focusing upon it long enough to finish the pages of the book, he activated a resonance within himself through his reading of true knowing. And he was never the same again.
Okay. And so I'm standing there and I'm like, okay, I have this bill and I'm following, I've read Abraham, I've been here before, and I'm like, okay, I feel like I'm here, and like you say, the bigger you is over here, and I'm just not catching up. My
because
life
I
is
have
over
this
here.
bill, because I have this bill,
No.
because I have this
Well,
bill,
yes,
because I have
yes.
this bill, because I have this bill, because I have this bill, because I have this bill, want money, 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 have this bill, have this bill, have this bill, want money, have this bill, have this bill. Just got to shift the airtime.
So what I did was, I just wrote a check for the entire amount, which was like 16 times more than it was to begin with. And it was sort of like, look, if I really believe this, I just have to go. I just have to go. I felt like I'm stuck, and I don't want to be stuck, and I know I'm not stuck, and so my higher self or my bigger self is over here, and I just need to go. I just need to go. I need to make a step.
But this is not an example of being in the vortex before you write the check. In other words, we want you to get in the vortex, get in the vortex, get in the vortex before you write the check, and then if you're inspired to write the check, it won't bounce.
Okay.
In other words, you don't want to use your willpower. You want to use your willpower to get in the vortex and then do anything that you're inspired to do.
I thought I was in the vortex when I wrote the check, but since then I've gotten out of the vortex and now the check might bounce. Like, I wasn't worried about it when I wrote the check, but never since then I've been vacillating between fear and disappointment and, oh my God, what did I do? And then sometimes believing and knowing.
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if you find yourself out of the vortex. Just find a way to get back in. In other words, we don't want to say to you that you should have regret for anything that you've done. We want to say to you, you never get it wrong. And the reason you never get it wrong is because it's never done. So maybe you were in the vortex and maybe you had that feeling. And because we're reading your vibration now, not then. So maybe you were in the vortex, but then you started, that's what buyer's remorse is. Buyer's, you buy it when you're in the vortex and then the vortex throws you out and you have buyer's remorse. In other words, you're not up to speed with what you want. And so but the important thing to remember is that at any point you can get back in the vortex. And what we want to say to you is that's the most important thing that you do. If the vortex spits you out and then you say, I shouldn't have done it, or what have I done, and you get into that worried place, that's just more evidence that your thoughts about worry, about your financial condition, are bogus thoughts in relationship with what your source knows about the abundance that's already been amassed. In other words, there are a lot of people who would listen to that and say, oh, Abraham is really trying to get them to deny reality. And we say, we really are. We want you, because your awareness of reality keeps you from the movement and the abundance and the prosperity that could be yours if you would stop doing that thing you do. So when you decide that, okay, so I wrote the check and I was in the vortex or I wasn't, doesn't matter. You wrote the check. You wrote the check. So what's the path of least resistance right now? To beat up on yourself for writing the check, or line up with the idea that you've written the check? So this is really an important conversation to have with yourself, because really there are no absolutely right and absolutely wrong choices. Just make one and line up with it. better line up with it and then make it. But if you've already made it, then line up with it. Line up with it. Line up with it. Make the choice and line up with it, or line up with it and then make the choice. But there's a whole lot of things that are going on that you're all, in other words, you already have made the choice of where you work. You've already made the choice of how your money is flowing to you today. So line up with it. Don't every day complain about where you are, or every day complain about the conditions not being the way you want them to be. Line up with it. The fastest path that we know of getting in the vortex, and this is so surprising to so many people, the fastest way we know to get into the vortex is to make peace with where you are. Because in your struggling against where you are, you keep unwanted things active in your vibration, where if you'll just make peace with where you are, it's like letting go of the struggle. And when you let go of the struggle, the vortex takes you right in every single time. So what you want to say to yourself to get yourself in the vortex is, doesn't matter if I was in or out, this is what I've done, and I'm glad that I've done it. And isn't it good that I was at a place of such positive belief and expectation that I felt the impulse to do something that was really so dramatic. Good for me. This is a sort of precursor to my not ever having to worry about money. This is a precursor to my being able to write a check for whatever I want whenever I want it. That was the feeling that I was wanting to practice. And of course, I'm looking forward to there being plenty of financial resources to back up every piece of paper that I write a promise on. In other words, a check is just a promise for payment, and a check in your environment used to be you could write a check and you had a little float time. You didn't have to keep the promise today. But today, you don't have any float time. When you write the check, it's like you got to keep the promise right now. And so I'm capable of keeping that promise, because I'm capable of moving things around in such a way that I can keep that promise. And this is really an indicator to me of what I'm wanting to do. I'm wanting to keep my promise to myself. I want to keep my promise to myself. So let's talk about this. Can you feel, ooh, really good? Can you feel, ooh, really, really good? We really want you to get this. This vortex of creation that we've been talking about, this is the check that you've already written. In other words, you wrote the check. It's there. And the way you keep that promise to yourself is by trusting and knowing and believing and getting in the vortex. In other words, not second guessing. I knew I could do it, and I can, and the universe has my back, and well-being is around me, and I am really good at what I do, and everything that I want flows to me, and I'm in the process of constant becoming, and I never want to hold back on my becoming. I always want to romp forward in powerful ways. I love being a deliberate creator. It is so fun to contemplate and then decide and then promise. Getting into the vortex is sort of like keeping your promise to yourself, your vibrational promise to yourself. And when you keep your vibrational promise to yourself, the resources must come to support it. It is not possible.
Okay. So in that sense, then there's really no such thing as a risk, really. You're not taking risk, because once you're in the vortex, it's the knowing and believing. There is no risk because there is no lack inside the vortex. And someone who really wants to nitpick would say, well, there's a risk that I won't get in the vortex. And we say, but why could there be a risk that you don't get in the vortex if you believe the vortex is real, if you believe in the vibrational validity of the vortex, if you have emotions that let you know? We could understand someone not believing in the vortex if they never felt joy or pain. But the fact that you feel emotions that let you know your proximity to it, we know you all have gone too far. You can't not know about the vortex. You know too much. Should have put it on the disclaimer. You can't go back. Right. You can't go back. Right. Once you know, once life has caused you to go there, you've gone. The larger part of you is gone. And the rest of you has no choice but to go along if you are to feel good, if you are to feel good, if you are to feel good. So once you understand that once you accept the validity of the vortex, and once you are aware of the constant sensation of your emotions, now you have no excuse whatsoever to not be moving in the direction of the vortex. You just have no excuse unless you just want to say, I'm just too lazy to focus. I'm too lazy to think. I have to face reality.
And to prove it to you, I'll tell you about myself. When I turn on the television, whatever's on, I just watch it. It's really a bummer in the hotel rooms because it's just that one hotel menu. I never make a selection with my remote control. When I turn on the television, whatever's there, I just watch it. When I get into my car, I never ever think about where I'm going. I just turn it on and start the engine and move into traffic, and then whatever traffic does with me, it does with me. Sometimes the cars push me that way, sometimes the cars push me that way. I don't pay any attention to any exit that I make. When I get off, I rarely know where I am. I'm just there. I don't think about it. I go to occasional restaurants. I just find myself there accidentally, actually. And works out good because sometimes I'm hungry. And I sit down and the lady brings me a menu and I refuse to look at it. I just say, bring me something. And she says, what do you like? And I always say, I don't know. So she brings me things and I eat it, and I usually don't like them very much. But I don't have time to think about things. Then I go to bed. Any bed. It doesn't really matter. And then when I wake up in the morning, I just do all that all over again. It takes a lot of work to focus, doesn't it? In other words, but you focus all day, every day. You do. You focus. You have the ability to think and focus. And you are discerning about so much that you think about. We just want to playfully jerk you into the realization that you are a thinker and you want to think, and you are a definer and you want to define. You want to define the details of your life experience. And when you take the idea of your ability to define into the context of the vortex, and you realize how much you have defined, and now you just do one small thing. You see, we're not asking you to figure your whole life out. You've done that. We're not asking you to go back and relive every conversation and every experience in order to know who you are and what you want. You've done that. We're just asking you to do one small thing. Focus yourself into the vortex. Think yourself in, bask your way in, appreciate your way in, get in the vortex, 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 and be the cooperative component of all that you've lined up, and then watch the way the world has its way with you. In other words, you'll find yourself inspired and moved in currents and directions that you cannot even describe. People will say, how do you do that? And you'll say, I can just feel it. How did you meet your mate? I just felt an inspiration. It was like I could not keep myself from that place. And when I went there, I could not keep myself from that spot. And when I saw that person, I could not keep myself from his arms. In other words, there was no turning back from the inevitable future experience that was already reality. All I had to do is get into the vortex by looking for things that feel good and focusing upon them long enough. And now the inspiration of who I really am is given to me all day, every day, by other cooperative components who are reflecting back to me all day, every day, who I am.